The champagne flutes clinked like fragile promises around me, their crystalline song swallowed by laughter I didn't belong to. I moved through the Grand Celestial Hotel's ballroom, like a ghost in a borrowed uniform. Black vest too tight across my chest, white shirt starched until it scratched my collarbone raw. The fabric smelled of industrial detergent and someone else's sweat from the last shift. My feet screamed inside secondhand heels half a size too small, but I smiled anyway. Always smile. That's what Marcus, our floor manager, had drilled into us during the pre-event briefing. New Year's Eve is our most important night, he'd said, his eyes scanning our lineup of temporary staff like we were soldiers heading into battle. These guests spend more on champagne than you make in 6 months. Invisible hands, visible smiles. Invisible. I'd become an expert at that. I balanced the silver tray against my hip, weaving between clusters of people draped in designer labels and careless wealth. A woman in crimson silk brushed past me, her perfume, something French and expensive, making my nose itch. She didn't even glance my way. To her, to all of them, I was part of the decor. Mobile furniture in human form, the ballroom was a cathedral of excess. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it like broken stars across marble floors so polished I could see my own exhausted reflection. Gold leaf crawled up the walls in Baroque patterns that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Somewhere, a string quartet played something classical and forgettable, the music bleeding into the ambient noise of privilege. My lower back ached. I'd been on my feet since 5 a.m., pulling a double shift because rent was due and my landlord had stopped accepting excuses. The morning had been banquet prep. Chopping, plating, running trays from kitchen to service area until my calves felt like they'd been filled with cement. Now, at 11:30 p.m., with 30 minutes until midnight, I was beginning to hallucinate that my bed was calling my name. I approached a group near the windows overlooking the city skyline. Manhattan stretched out below like a circuit board of lights and ambition. A man in a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin took a glass from my tray without looking at me. His conversation never paused. The merger goes through in January, he was saying. We're talking 8 figures, minimum. 8 figures. I tried not to think about how that would change my life, how it wouldn't even register as significant in his. I turned toward the bar to refill my tray when I felt it, that primitive instinct that tells you you're being watched. The sensation crawled up my spine like cold fingers. I glanced around, scanning the crowd, but saw nothing unusual, just more beautiful people in their beautiful clothes, insulated from reality by zeros in their bank accounts. Then the crowd shifted, parted like a curtain, and I saw him. He stood near the private elevators at the far end of the ballroom, and even from this distance, he commanded space in a way I'd never witnessed. Tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that strained against a black suit that probably cost more than my car. No, scratch that. More than 3 of my cars, if I'd owned even one. His hair was dark, styled back with the kind of casual perfection that took effort to achieve, and his jaw could have been carved from granite. But it wasn't his appearance that made my breath catch. It was the energy around him. 3 men flanked him, massive, alert, their eyes constantly scanning the room with professional paranoia. They wore earpieces, and their jackets bulged slightly at the hip in a way that made my stomach drop. The crowd gave them space instinctively, an invisible force field of unspoken fear and respect. The man in the center, the one who'd made me forget how to breathe, lifted a glass of what looked like scotch to his lips. His eyes, even from across the room, were dark and intense, and they were fixed directly on me. My heart stuttered. I looked away quickly, heat flooding my cheeks. Surely I was imagining it. Men like that didn't look at women like me. I was nobody. Nothing. Just another struggling server trying to survive in a city that chewed up dreams and spit out debt. I focused on my tray, on putting one foot in front of the other toward the service station. But that feeling, being watched, being seen in a way that felt almost predatory, didn't fade. It intensified. "Refill, sweetheart?" Tony, one of the bartenders, asked as I approached. His kind eyes crinkled with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Long day," I managed, forcing my voice to sound normal. Just need more champagne. As he loaded fresh flutes onto my tray, I risked another glance toward the elevators. He was closer now. Impossibly closer. He'd moved through the crowd with the fluid grace of a predator, his security detail forming a moving wall around him. People stepped aside without even realizing they were doing it, some primal part of their brain recognizing danger even dressed in Armani. Our eyes met. The world narrowed to that single point of connection. His gaze was molten, intense, stripping away every defense I'd carefully constructed. In his eyes, I saw hunger, not the simple physical kind, but something deeper, more consuming, something that promised both salvation and destruction. I jerked my gaze away, my hands trembling as I lifted the tray. This was ridiculous. I was overtired, overstressed, probably dehydrated. I was imagining things. "You okay?" Tony asked. "Fine," I lied. "Totally fine." I turned back toward the crowd, determined to finish this shift, collect my pay, and go home to my shoebox apartment where I could collapse and forget this night ever happened. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. I made it exactly 7 steps before disaster struck. A woman in a gold-sequined gown backed up without looking, laughing at something her companion said. Her elbow connected with my tray at the exact wrong angle. Time slowed to a cruel crawl. I watched, helpless, as 6 crystal flutes of champagne lifted into the air in a perfect arc, liquid catching the chandelier light like liquid diamonds. Then gravity remembered its job. The champagne came down in a cascading wave, and through some cosmic joke, it didn't hit the woman who'd caused the collision. It didn't hit the marble floor in an easy-to-clean puddle. It hit him. Every single drop. The man in the black suit, the one with the dangerous eyes and the armed security detail, stood directly in the splash zone. Champagne soaked his shoulder, ran down the front of his undoubtedly expensive jacket, and dripped onto shoes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The ballroom didn't go silent. That only happened in movies, but the immediate area around us dropped several decibels. People turned to stare. His security detail moved instantly, hands inside their jackets, faces hard with threat, and I stood there, empty tray in my trembling hands, staring at the man I'd just drenched in champagne, watching my entire life crumble into ruins. My voice came out as a squeak. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He didn't move, didn't blink. Champagne dripped from his sleeve onto the pristine marble floor. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop sounding like a countdown to my execution. Then, slowly, he reached up and wiped a droplet from his jaw with one long finger. The gesture was almost casual, but the tension radiating from him was anything but. When he spoke, his voice was low, accented with something European, Italian, maybe, and smooth as aged whiskey. "Do you always make such an impression? Or am I special?" Was he joking? I couldn't tell. His face remained impassive, carved from stone, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement? Anger? Interest? She backed into, "I'm so sorry," I stammered, feeling tears prick at my eyes. This job was everything. Without it, I couldn't make rent, couldn't eat, couldn't survive. "Please, let me get towels. I'll pay for the cleaning. You'll what?" He stepped closer, and I caught his scent beneath the champagne, sandalwood and something darker, more dangerous. His security moved with him, a synchronized unit of threat. "You'll pay for a $15,000 suit with your server wages? $15,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. I was going to be sick. I had no words, no defense, just the crushing weight of my own inadequacy. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze traveling over my face with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare. Then, without warning, he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf who'd found something interesting to play with before the kill. "What's your name?" "Emma," I whispered. "Emma Winters." "Emma." He repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. "I'm going to remember that." That sounded like a threat. One of his security detail leaned in, whispering something in rapid Italian. The man nodded once, never breaking eye contact with me. "It seems," he said, his voice dropping even lower. That you owe me a debt, Emma Winters, and I always collect what I'm owed. Before I could respond, before I could apologize again or beg for mercy, he turned and walked away, his security detail closing around him like a living shield. They disappeared into the private elevator, and the doors slid shut with a whisper of expensive engineering. I stood there, alone in a crowd of hundreds, the empty tray slipping from my numb fingers to clatter against the marble floor. Marcus appeared at my elbow, his face purple with rage. My office. Now. As I followed him through the service corridors, away from the glittering ballroom and back into the harsh fluorescent reality of the staff areas, one thought circled through my mind on repeat. Who the hell was that man, and what did he mean by collecting his debt? I didn't get fired. Somehow, impossibly, I didn't get fired. Marcus had screamed at me for 20 minutes straight in his cramped office that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. His face had gone from purple to an alarming shade of crimson as he detailed exactly how much trouble I'd caused, how important that guest was, how I'd humiliated the hotel on its most prestigious night of the year. But he didn't fire me. You're lucky Mr. Castellano didn't demand your termination, Marcus had finally said, his voice hoarse from yelling. You're lucky he found the whole thing amusing. Castellano. So that was his name. Who is he? I'd asked quietly, still trembling from adrenaline and fear. Marcus had looked at me like I'd just asked who the president was. You really don't know? When I shook my head, he'd laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. Dante Castellano. He owns half of Manhattan's real estate, including this hotel. He's also... Marcus had paused, choosing his words carefully. A very influential businessman. The kind you don't want to cross. The kind with armed security. The kind people feared instinctively. The kind, I realized with growing horror, who probably had connections to things that happened in shadows and back alleys. I'd made it home at 2 a.m, climbing the 4 flights to my studio apartment because the elevator had been broken for 3 weeks. My hands had shaken so badly I'd dropped my keys twice before getting the door open. Now, 3 days later, I still couldn't shake the memory of those dark eyes watching me, that smooth voice promising to collect his debt. Emma, table 6 needs their check. Sarah's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. You okay? You've been weird since New Year's. I forced a smile from my coworker, grabbing the check presenter from the POS system. We were at Riverside Diner, the breakfast place where I worked my morning shifts. It was the polar opposite of the Grand Celestial. Cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and customers who tipped in quarters. But it was honest work, and the owner didn't yell. Just tired, I said, which wasn't a lie. I'd barely slept since that night, jumping at every unexpected sound, half convinced that Castellano's security detail would show up too. What? Break my legs over champagne. You need a vacation, Sarah said, tying her apron. Or at least a full night's sleep. You've got shadows under your eyes that have shadows. I delivered the check to table 6, an elderly couple who came in every Wednesday for the early bird special and tried to focus on the mundane comfort of routine, pouring coffee, taking orders, wiping down tables, normal things, safe things. The diner door chimed, and I glanced up automatically, my customer service smile already in place. It died on my lips. A man stood in the doorway, not Castellano, but one of his security detail. I recognized him immediately. The tallest one, with the scar bisecting his left eyebrow and eyes like chips of ice. He wore a black suit despite the morning hour, and he scanned the diner with professional efficiency before his gaze locked onto me. My heart stopped. He walked toward me with purposeful strides, and conversations around us faltered. People could sense danger the way animals sensed storms. The man stopped in front of my station, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Emma Winters? His voice was gravel and granite. Yes? It came out as barely a whisper. He reached into his jacket. I flinched and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. Heavy cardstock, expensive. My name was written across the front in elegant script that probably came from a real fountain pen. From Mr. Castellano, he said, placing it on the counter between us. He requests your presence tonight. A car will collect you at 7 p.m. from your apartment. What? I don't... It's not a request. His expression didn't change, but somehow the words carried the weight of absolute authority. The address is in the envelope. Dress appropriately. Then he was gone, the door chiming cheerfully behind him, as if he hadn't just turned my world upside down. I stared at the envelope like it might explode. Emma? Sarah appeared at my elbow, her eyes wide. Who the hell was that? Are you in some kind of trouble? Was I? I had no idea. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope, feeling the quality of the paper. Rich people even had better stationery. I don't know, I admitted. I waited until my lunch break to open it, hiding in the storage room between shelves of industrial-sized ketchup bottles and napkin dispensations. Inside was a single card with an address in Tribeca, one of Manhattan's most expensive neighborhoods, and a handwritten note in the same elegant script. Emma, you owe me a suit. I've decided how you can repay me. Come alone. Tell no one. DC. This was insane. I should call the police. I should tell someone. This had all the hallmarks of a terrible idea, possibly a dangerous one. But underneath the fear, something else flickered. Curiosity. And, God help me, a twisted kind of excitement. What did he want from me? The rest of my shift crawled by with agonizing slowness. I burned myself on the coffee pot twice, forgot orders, and gave someone decaf instead of regular, which earned me a 15-minute rant about how I was ruining their day. By the time I made it home at 4 p.m., I was a wreck of nerves and speculation. Dress appropriately, the security guard had said. I stood in front of my closet, a generous term for the tension rod holding up my meager wardrobe, and wanted to cry. I owned exactly 3 dresses. One was my server uniform, one had a stain on the hem I'd never gotten out, and one was a simple black dress I'd bought at a thrift store for my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. It would have to do. I showered in my tiny bathroom with the perpetually dripping faucet, trying to scrub away 3 days of anxiety and grease smell from the diner. My hands still shook as I dried my hair, applied the minimal makeup I owned, and slipped into the black dress. In the cracked mirror above my sink, I barely recognized myself. The dress was simple but flattering, hitting just above my knee. I'd lost weight from stress and too many skipped meals, and it showed in the sharp angle of my collarbones, the hollows beneath my cheeks. I looked fragile, breakable. At exactly 7 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The car is waiting. I grabbed my coat, threadbare wool from a season clearance rack, and headed downstairs on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. A black SUV idled at the curb, so pristine and expensive it looked photoshopped against the backdrop of my shabby neighborhood. The windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal. As I approached, the rear door opened from inside. I hesitated at the threshold of something that felt irrevocable. Then I got in. The interior smelled like leather and luxury. Soft ambient lighting ran along the floorboards, and the seats were heated despite the mild evening. A privacy screen separated me from the driver, who pulled smoothly into traffic without a word. I'd expected one of the security guards, but the back seat was empty, except for me. Classical music played softly through speakers I couldn't see, something melancholy and beautiful that matched the racing of my heart. We drove through Manhattan as the city transformed from day to night, lights beginning to spark in windows, the sky deepening to indigo above the buildings. I watched familiar neighborhoods give way to unfamiliar ones, each block more expensive than the last. Tribeca materialized around us, converted warehouses now worth millions, restaurants with Michelin stars, people who wouldn't look twice at a $15,000 suit. The SUV pulled up to a building that looked like it had been carved from steel and glass by an architect who charged by the sharp angle. A doorman in a uniform nicer than anything I owned opened my door. "Miss Winters," he said, as if he'd been expecting me. "Mr. Castellano is waiting. Penthouse level." Of course it was the penthouse. The lobby was all marble and modern art that I didn't understand, but knew cost more than my existence. The elevator had a special key slot for the penthouse, which the doorman activated before stepping back. "Have a pleasant evening, miss." The doors closed, sealing me in with my reflection and my hammering heart. The elevator rose so smoothly I barely felt the movement, just the increasing pressure in my chest as the numbers climbed. 30 floors. 40. 50. When the doors finally opened, they revealed a private foyer with a single door. It was already open. "Come in, Emma." His voice drifted from somewhere inside, smooth and commanding. "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." As if that were an option. I stepped into Dante Castellano's penthouse, and the door whispered shut behind me with the soft, final click of a lock engaging. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan like a kingdom spread out below its ruler. The decor was minimalist but clearly expensive. Dark wood, leather, steel accents, art on the walls that I suspected belonged in museums, and everywhere, the sense of controlled power, of danger wrapped in civilization. He stood by the windows, backlit by the city lights, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. He'd ditched the suit jacket, and his white shirt was rolled up to his forearms, revealing tanned skin and the hint of a tattoo disappearing under the fabric. "You came," he said, turning to face me fully. "I wasn't entirely certain you would. Did I have a choice?" The words escaped before I could stop them. His lips curved into that wolf smile. "There's always a choice, Emma. You made yours when you got in that car." He moved toward me with that same predatory grace I remembered from the ballroom, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But I held my ground, lifting my chin even as my pulse thundered. He stopped close enough that I caught his scent, sandalwood and something uniquely him, something that made my head spin. "Would you like a drink?" he asked. "I'd like to know why I'm here. Straight to business. I like that." He walked to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of wine without asking my preference. He handed me one, and our fingers brushed. His warm, mine ice cold. "You owe me a debt, remember? The suit. I'll pay you back. It'll take time, but I don't want your money, Emma." He studied me over the rim of his glass, those dark eyes seeing too much. "I want something else entirely." My mouth went dry. "What?" He set his glass down with deliberate care, then reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was almost tender, completely at odds with the intensity burning in his gaze. "I want you to spend New Year's with me," he said softly. 3 days. Here, in this penthouse. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What?" 3 days. "You'll stay here. Let me get to know you. And at the end, your debt is cleared." His thumb traced the line of my jaw, and I shivered despite myself. "What do you say, Emma Winters? Do we have a deal?" "You're insane." The words tumbled out before my brain could filter them. "You don't even know me. Why would you—" "Don't I?" He dropped his hand from my face but didn't step back. We stood close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Emma Winters, 26 years old, works 3 jobs to afford a studio apartment in Washington Heights that should be condemned, sends money to her mother in Ohio every month even though you can barely feed yourself. No criminal record, no social media presence. You're invisible by choice, aren't you? Cold dread washed over me. "You had me investigated." "Of course I did." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like violating my privacy was just another Tuesday for him. "I make it a point to know everything about people who interest me. I spilled champagne on you. That's not interesting. That's clumsy. You looked at me like I was just a man." His voice dropped, intimate and dangerous. "Do you know how rare that is? Everyone in that ballroom knew who I was. They feared me or wanted something from me. But you—" He reached out again, this time catching my wrist, his thumb finding my racing pulse. "You saw a stranger in an expensive suit. Nothing more. Because I didn't know, and now you do." His grip tightened fractionally, not painful, but possessive. "Now you know I'm Dante Castellano, that I own enough of this city to make you disappear if I wanted, that the security following me aren't just for show, and you're still here, in my home, drinking my wine." "Why is that, Emma?" "Because I was an idiot, because some self-destructive part of me wanted to know what happened next. Because standing in his penthouse, caught in his gravitational pull, felt more alive than I'd felt in years of just surviving." 3 days, I said instead of answering. "And then what? You just let me go? Then you're free. Debt paid. You never have to see me again." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Unless you want to. Why me? I pulled my wrist from his grip, needing distance to think. I walked toward the windows, toward the glittering city below. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women who actually belong in a place like this. I don't want them. He came to stand beside me, our reflections ghostly in the glass. I want the girl who apologized 6 times for an accident that wasn't her fault, who was more worried about losing her job than about the man she'd just soaked, who looked exhausted and scared and still stood her ground. His reflection shifted, and suddenly he was behind me, close enough that his breath stirred my hair. I want to know what you taste like when you're not afraid, what sounds you make when someone actually sees you, when someone touches you like you matter. My breath caught. This was crazy, dangerous, everything I should run from. I won't sleep with you, I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. If that's what this is whatever you want it to be. His hand settled on my shoulders, warm and heavy. You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't touch you unless you ask me to. A pause, loaded with promise. But I think you will ask, Emma, eventually. The arrogance should have infuriated me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. I need to think. No. He turned me to face him, and the intensity in his eyes stole my breath. Stop thinking. Stop calculating. For once in your life, just feel. What do you want, right now, in this moment? What did I want? To not go back to my freezing apartment, to 3 jobs that ground me down to nothing, to a life of invisible servitude, to spend 3 days in luxury, even if it came with strings attached, to let myself be seen by someone who looked at me like I was something precious and breakable and worth possessing. I swallowed hard. I want to not be afraid all the time. Something softened in his expression. Then stay. 3 days, Emma. Let me take care of you. Let me show you what it's like to matter to someone. It was manipulation. I knew that. This whole thing was a game to him, a powerful man amusing himself with someone beneath his station. But God, I was so tired of struggling, of being invisible, of going to bed hungry and waking up exhausted. 3 days. What could it hurt? Okay, I whispered. His smile was triumphant. Say it properly. Okay, I'll stay. 3 days. Good girl. The words shouldn't have affected me, but they did, sending a shiver down my spine. He released me, stepping back. Your room is prepared. Marco will bring your things tomorrow. I don't have things. Not anything worth bringing. His expression darkened. Then we'll get you things. But tonight you'll find everything you need already provided. Come. He led me through the penthouse, past a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant, a dining room with a table that could seat 12, a living space with furniture that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Each room was immaculate, sterile almost, like a showroom instead of a home. Do you actually live here? I asked. Or is this just for show? I have several residences. This is where I stay when I want privacy. He opened a door at the end of a long hallway. Your room? It wasn't a room. It was a suite larger than my entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, covered in linens that looked cloud-soft. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city. An ensuite bathroom was visible through an open door, all marble and gold fixtures. On the bed lay several boxes, clearly from expensive boutiques. I took the liberty, Dante said, watching my reaction. Clothes, toiletries, whatever you might need. I walked to the bed, opened the nearest box. Inside was a silk nightgown in deep emerald, the fabric so delicate it felt like water. The price tag was still attached, $800. For pajamas. This is too much. Nothing is too much. He leaned against the doorframe, looking entirely too satisfied with himself. Not for you, not anymore. You don't even know me, I repeated, but it sounded weak even to my ears. I will. It was a promise, a threat. Get some rest, Emma. Tomorrow we begin properly. He left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. I stood in the center of luxury I'd never imagined, holding a nightgown worth more than my monthly rent, and wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to. I showered in the bathroom, which had 3 different types of shower heads and water pressure that felt like a massage. The products were all high-end brands I'd only seen in magazines: shampoo that smelled like jasmine, body wash that left my skin impossibly soft. The nightgown fit perfectly, of course it did. He'd investigated me thoroughly enough to know my size. I should have been terrified by that. Instead, I felt claimed, like I'd already become his possession without realizing it. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the penthouse, soft hums of expensive appliances, the distant sound of the city below. And once, footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Pausing, waiting. But the door never opened. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. I woke disoriented, taking several seconds to remember where I was. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. I shot up in bed. I was late for my shift at the diner. Marcus at the hotel would... No. I'd called them both last night, after Dante left. Told them I had a family emergency, needed a few days off. Sarah had been concerned. Marcus had been annoyed but accepting. I'd lied to them. For this. For him. A knock at my door made me jump. Yes? Breakfast is ready, Miss Winters, a woman's voice, professional and kind. In the dining room whenever you're prepared. I found clothes laid out in the closet. Designer jeans that fit like they'd been made for me. A cashmere sweater in soft gray, underwear still in packaging from La Perla. I dressed in a daze, each piece of clothing a reminder that I was in over my head. The dining room table was set for 2, laden with more food than I'd seen in months. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs cooked 3 different ways, bacon, yogurt, fresh squeezed juice. The woman who'd knocked, middle-aged, kind-faced, wearing a simple uniform, smiled at me. "I'm Rosa," she said. "I manage Mr. Castellano's household. Please, sit, eat. You're too thin." It was such a grandmotherly thing to say that I almost laughed. I sat, overwhelmed by choices, and started with a croissant that dissolved like butter on my tongue. Dante appeared as I was eating, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that emphasized his build. He looked less severe than last night, more approachable, though no less dangerous. "You slept well?" He poured himself coffee from a silver carafe, his movements economical and practiced. "The bed it's very comfortable. Good." He sat across from me, studying me with those intense eyes. "I've cleared my schedule for the next 3 days. You have my undivided attention." That should not have sounded as intimate as it did. "What exactly do you want from me?" I set down my croissant, my appetite suddenly gone. Really. Not the debt repayment story, the truth. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his coffee cup. When he spoke, his voice was different, less controlled, more raw. 10 years ago, I was engaged. Her name was Sophia. She was beautiful, cultured, from a good family, everything I was supposed to want. He stared into his coffee like it held answers. 2 weeks before the wedding, she disappeared. Ran away with my business partner after they'd embezzled $3 million from my accounts. I stayed silent, sensing this was important. I found them, of course, handled it. The way he said handled made my blood run cold, but it taught me something. Women in my world, they see the money, the power. They perform. They become what they think I want. I can never trust what's real. He looked up, pinning me with his gaze. "But you didn't know who I was. Your reaction was genuine. Your fear, your apology, even the way you're sitting there now, uncomfortable in expensive clothes. It's all real. And I'm starving for something real, Emma." My heart clenched. Underneath the danger, the arrogance, was loneliness, a gilded cage of his own making. "So I'm what? A novelty? Something real to play with for 3 days before you get bored? Maybe." His honesty was brutal. "Or maybe you're exactly what I've been looking for and didn't know it." He stood, walking around the table. He offered his hand. "Come. Let me show you my world. Then you can decide if you want to be part of it." I stared at his outstretched hand, strong, scarred across the knuckles, capable of violence and tenderness both. Then I took it, sealing whatever fate awaited me. Dante's world, I discovered, was built on contradictions. He took me to his office first, a sprawling space on the 40th floor of a building he owned in Midtown. The entire floor belonged to him, a maze of sleek conference rooms and assistants who moved with military precision. Everyone we passed lowered their eyes respectfully, murmuring, "Mr. Castellano," like a prayer. But in his private office, surrounded by windows that framed Manhattan like a possession, he showed me photographs. Not of business deals or real estate acquisitions, but of a small village in Sicily bathed in golden light. "I was born there," he said, his accent thickening with memory, "in a house with no running water, where my mother made pasta by hand every morning. We had nothing. Less than nothing." He pointed to a faded photo of a young boy with dark eyes and a serious expression, standing beside a thin woman with kind face. "That's me at 8, the day my father was killed, shot in the street over a debt of $200. My throat tightened. Dante. My mother brought me to New York 3 months later, worked herself to death in garment factories so I could go to school. She died when I was 16. His finger traced the woman's face in the photograph. I built all of this from nothing. Every dollar, every property, every connection. Some of it legally. Much of it less so. He was admitting to crime, to being exactly what his security detail and reputation suggested. A criminal, a gangster, someone dangerous. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to understand." He turned to face me, his expression fierce. "Everything I have, I took. I fought for. I bled for. And I protect what's mine with everything I am. That's who I am, Emma. Not the man in the expensive suit at the party. Not the charming host serving you breakfast. I'm the boy who watched his father bleed out in the street and swore he'd never be powerless again. The intensity in his eyes should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something shift inside my chest. Recognition, maybe. I knew what it meant to be powerless. To fight just to survive. "I understand," I said softly. His expression softened fractionally. "Do you? Because once you know the truth, there's no unknowing it. You'll be connected to me, to my world. That comes with consequences." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." He stepped closer, cupping my face with both hands. "I don't do anything halfway, Emma. If you stay after today, if you choose this, I won't let you go easily. I protect what's mine, obsessively, completely, sometimes violently." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I'm not yours. Not yet." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "But you will be. I can see it in your eyes. You're already falling, Bella. You just won't admit it yet." The arrogance should have snapped me out of whatever spell he was weaving. Instead, his certainty was intoxicating. When was the last time someone had wanted me so completely, had seen me as something worth fighting for? Never. The answer was never. A knock at the door broke the moment. One of his security team, the one from the diner, Marco, entered without waiting for permission. His face was grim. "Boss, we have a problem." The shipment from Barcelona was intercepted. DEA got involved. Dante's entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "How much did we lose?" $12 million. 6 of our guys arrested. He swore in Italian, sharp and vicious. Then, remembering I was there, he turned to me. "Marco will take you back to the penthouse. I need to handle this." "I can wait." "No." His tone brooked no argument. "This isn't something you need to see. Go. I'll be back tonight." Marco guided me to the elevator, his massive frame blocking me from the chaos erupting in the office behind us. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Dante on his phone, his face harder than I'd ever seen it. Every inch the dangerous man he'd warned me about. The penthouse felt like a luxurious prison without him there. Rosa fed me lunch, pasta that melted on my tongue, salad with vegetables that actually tasted like something, and tried to make small talk, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "He's never brought a woman here before. she said finally, clearing my plate. Not to this apartment. This is his sanctuary. Why are you telling me this? Because you're good for him. I see the way he looks at you, like you're water and he's been dying of thirst. She patted my hand with maternal affection. But his world is dangerous, child. If you stay, you need to understand that. I spent the afternoon exploring the penthouse like a thief, opening doors I probably shouldn't. Most rooms were impersonal, guest bedrooms that had never been used, a gym with equipment that looked brand new, an office with a laptop locked behind passwords I couldn't crack. But then I found his bedroom. I shouldn't have entered. It was a violation of privacy, of trust. But curiosity pulled me across the threshold into a space that was unmistakably his. Dark colors, minimal furniture, but personal in ways the rest of the apartment wasn't. Books in Italian stacked on the nightstand, a photograph of his mother on the dresser, and on the wall, a piece of abstract art that looked like violence rendered in paint, all slashes of red and black. That's a Basquiat original, Dante's voice came from the doorway, making me jump. Worth about 15 million. I bought it because it reminds me of how I felt the night I killed the man who murdered my father. I spun to face him. He leaned against the doorframe, his tie loosened, exhaustion evident in the set of his shoulders. But his eyes were sharp, assessing my reaction. You killed him? My voice came out steady despite the racing of my heart. I was 19. He was walking out of a bar in Little Italy, drunk and happy. I put 3 bullets in his chest. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. That was the night I stopped being a victim and became something else, something people feared. He crossed to me, backing me against the wall beside the painting. Does that scare you, Emma, knowing I've killed? That I'll kill again if someone threatens what's mine? Yes, I whispered truthfully. Good. You should be scared. His hand came up to rest beside my head, caging me in. But you're still here. Still looking at me like I'm just a man instead of a monster. Why? Because I was broken too, I realized. Because working 3 jobs to survive, sending money to a mother who never appreciated it, existing in the shadows of other people's lives. That had killed something in me too. Different than Dante's violence, but just as destructive. Maybe I'm tired of being afraid, I said. His eyes darkened. Or maybe you recognize something in me. The same hunger. The same need to matter, to be seen, to take something back from a world that's only ever taken from you. He was right. God help me, he was right. The shipment, I said, needing to change the subject before I did something reckless. Did you fix it? For now. Lost money, but that can be replaced. Lost men. He shook his head. That's harder. But I made the necessary calls. Lawyers, judges, people who owe me favors. They'll be out by morning. The casual corruption should have appalled me. Instead, I was fascinated by the machinery of his power, how easily he manipulated systems designed to be impartial. You're staring, he murmured. You're terrifying, and yet you're not running. His hand slid from the wall to my waist, pulling me flush against him. Tell me to stop, Emma. Tell me you want me to take you home and forget this ever happened. I'll do it. I'll let you go. Would he? I wasn't sure, but I also wasn't sure I wanted him to. What happens on day 4? I asked instead. After the 3 days are up, that depends on you. His other hand came up to tangle in my hair, tilting my head back. You can walk away. Go back to your life. I'll set you up, of course. Pay off your debts. Help your mother. Make sure you never have to work 3 jobs again. A parting gift. Or you stay. Become part of my world. Accept everything that comes with being mine. The protection, the danger, the obsession. I won't share you. Won't let you go. You'll be mine completely, my lover. Eventually, my wife. The mother of my children. His grip tightened possessively. I'll own you, Emma. Every breath, every thought, every piece of your soul. And in return, I'll give you everything. Everything you've ever wanted, and things you haven't even dreamed of yet. It was madness. A trap wrapped in silk and promises. 3 days ago, I'd been invisible, struggling, alone. Now, a dangerous man was offering me the world on a platter. with only my freedom as the price. "You're insane," I breathed. "Probably." He smiled, that wolf smile I was beginning to crave. "But I'm also yours if you want me. Say yes, Bella. Stop fighting what you feel." "I don't even know what I feel." "Then let me show you." He kissed me. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was claiming, possessive, a brand burned into my soul. His mouth moved over mine with practiced skill, coaxing my lips open, his tongue sliding against mine in a rhythm that made my knees weak. I gasped against him, and he swallowed the sound, one hand fisting in my hair while the other splayed across my lower back, holding me captive. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered this was manipulation, a game, a powerful man amusing himself with someone beneath him. Instead, I kissed him back. My hands found his shoulders, his neck, threading into his hair. He groaned, a deep, masculine sound that sent heat flooding through me. The kiss deepened, turned desperate. He walked me backward until my legs hit the bed, and we fell together onto expensive sheets that smelled like him. His weight pressed me into the mattress, solid and overwhelming. His hands roamed, my waist, my ribs, skating the underside of my breast through the cashmere sweater he'd given me. Every touch sent electricity arcing through my nervous system. "Tell me to stop," he muttered against my mouth, even as his hand slid under my sweater, finding bare skin. "Christ, Emma, tell me to stop before I can't." But I didn't want him to stop. I wanted to feel something other than fear and exhaustion, wanted to matter to someone, even if it was twisted and dangerous and destined to end badly. "Don't stop," I whispered. His control shattered. He pulled my sweater over my head, his eyes going molten at the sight of the lace bra he'd provided. Black, delicate, expensive. "Perfetta," he breathed. Before his mouth found my neck, my collarbone, the swell of my breast above the lace. I arched into him, overwhelmed by sensation. His stubble scraped deliciously against my sensitive skin. His hands seemed to be everywhere at once. Skilled, knowing exactly how to touch me to make me gasp and writhe beneath him. This was dangerous. This was stupid. This was... Dante. His name escaped as a plea. He lifted his head, his eyes searching mine. Whatever he saw there made him curse softly. Then, with visible effort, he pulled back, sitting up and running both hands through his hair. "Not like this," he said roughly. "Not when you're confused. Not when you don't know what you want." I sat up, feeling exposed and rejected. "You just said..." "I know what I said." He stood, putting distance between us. And I meant it. But I also meant what I told you before. I want you to choose this, fully, consciously. Not because I seduced you in a weak moment. He picked up my sweater, handed it to me with surprising gentleness. 2 more days, Emma. Figure out what you want. Because on day 4, I'm going to ask you to choose, and whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Liar, I thought. If I tried to leave, if I chose to walk away, would he really let me go? Or would that possessive darkness I'd seen in his eyes find a way to keep me? I pulled my sweater back on, feeling the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. "Get some rest," he said, his voice strained. "Tomorrow I want to show you something. Something important." He left me there in his bedroom, surrounded by his scent and his things, and the ghost of his touch on my skin. I knew then, with crystalline clarity, that I was already lost. The question was whether I'd let myself drown or find a way to swim. The next morning, Dante took me to a place I never expected. We drove through Brooklyn in one of his armored SUVs, Marco at the wheel and 2 other security guards following in a second vehicle. The neighborhood transformed from trendy brownstones to grittier streets, buildings tagged with graffiti, people eyeing our expensive convoy with suspicion and hostility. "Where are we going?" I asked, as we pulled up to a warehouse that had seen better days. "My real office," Dante said, helping me out of the vehicle. His hand remained on my lower back, possessive and protective. "The Midtown building is for legitimate business. This is where I actually work." Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a command center. Men in various states of casual dress moved with purpose, counting money at tables, speaking in rapid Italian on phones, cleaning weapons that made my stomach drop. Everyone stopped when Dante entered, straightening with respect that bordered on fear. "Boss." A man with a scar running down his cheek approached. "We weren't expecting you. I'm showing Emma my world, all of it." Dante's arm tightened around my waist. "Emma, this is Luca, my second in command." Luca's eyes assessed me with professional thoroughness. "The girl from New Year's, word travels. It always does." Dante led me deeper into the warehouse, past rooms I tried not to look into too closely. "I want you to understand, Emma, this is what I am, not just expensive suits and penthouses. This, violence, crime, blood when necessary." We entered his office, a stark contrast to the sleek midtown space. This room was functional, brutal in its honesty, maps on the walls marked with territories, ledgers tracking money both legal and illegal, a gun resting casually on the desk. "Why are you showing me this?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Because I need you to choose with your eyes open." He turned me to face him, his expression fierce. "If you stay, you become part of this. You'll be protected, yes, cherished, given everything. But you'll also be a target. My enemies will see you as a weakness to exploit. Your life will never be simple again." As if summoning his words, a commotion erupted outside the office. Shouting in Italian, the sound of struggle. Dante's entire body tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward the gun on his desk. Marco burst through the door. "We have a problem." Victor's men grabbed one of our runners. "They're demanding a meeting." "Victor." Dante spat the name like poison. "The Russian bastard has been pushing into our territory for months. He has the kid, boss. Says he'll trade him for the shipment routes through the port." I watched Dante transform. The man who'd kissed me with desperate passion yesterday disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. This was the killer, the gangster, the man who'd put 3 bullets in his father's murderer without hesitation. "Set up the meeting. Pier 17, 1 hour, full security detail." His voice was arctic. "And Emma comes with me." "Boss, that's not—" "She comes." No room for argument. I want Victor to see what he's threatening when he pushes into my territory. I want him to understand the consequences of touching what's mine. I was a prop, a message, a way to demonstrate power. I should have been furious. Instead, I felt a twisted thrill at being claimed so publicly, so absolutely. The pier was abandoned, a relic of New York's industrial past now left to decay. Our convoy arrived first, Dante's men spreading out in defensive positions with military precision. Marco handed Dante a gun, which he tucked into the back of his waistband with the ease of long practice. "Stay close to me," he commanded, pulling me against his side. "Don't speak. Don't react. Just be exactly what you are, mine." Victor arrived 10 minutes later with his own show of force. 6 men, all armed, all radiating threat. And in the center, a kid who couldn't have been more than 17, bloodied and terrified. Victor himself was massive, 6'5" of muscle and menace, with cold blue eyes and a smile that promised violence. He spoke with a thick Russian accent, his words directed at Dante but his gaze crawling over me with insulting familiarity. "Castellano, you bring a whore to business meeting? You getting soft?" Dante's arm tightened around me, the only sign of his rage. "Watch your mouth, Victor. That's my woman you're talking about." "Your woman?" Victor laughed, cruel and mocking. "Since when do you keep pets? I thought you learned your lesson with the last bitch who betrayed you." The mention of Sophia, it had to be, made Dante's jaw clench. "The boy. Release him, and we'll discuss territories like civilized men." "Civilized?" Victor's men pushed the teenager forward, and I saw the extent of his injuries: broken nose, split lip, bruises darkening his ribs. "There is nothing civilized about our business, Castellano. You want the boy? Give me the port routes. Or I start taking more of your people. Maybe next time I take your pretty whore here. See how soft I can make her scream." It happened fast. Dante moved with lethal grace, his gun appearing in his hand as if conjured. The shot echoed across the water, not at Victor, but at the man holding the teenager. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, and he dropped with a scream. "The next one goes in your head, Victor," Dante said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around us. Guns were drawn on both sides, fingers on triggers, everyone a heartbeat from violence. You don't threaten what's mine. Ever. Victor's smile never wavered, but his eyes calculated odds. He was outnumbered. Dante's men had taken better positions, and Marco had a rifle trained on Victor's forehead from the warehouse roof. You'd start a war over some girl, Victor asked. I'd burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone hurt her. Dante's certainty was absolute. Take your man and go. The port stays mine. This is your only warning. For a long moment, the tableau held, violence suspended by the thinnest thread. Then Victor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You've changed, Castellano. Love makes men weak. I'll remember that. He gestured to his men to retrieve their wounded. But this isn't over. You can't protect her forever. They left, the teenager collapsing into Marco's arms. Dante didn't lower his gun until Victor's vehicles disappeared from view. Then he turned to me, and the cold calculation melted into something else. Fear, need, possessiveness all tangled together. Are you all right? His hands roamed over me, checking for injuries I didn't have. Did he touch you? Did any of them? I'm fine, but I was shaking. The reality of how close we'd come to a bloodbath finally hitting me. Dante. That man. He threatened to. I know. He pulled me into his arms, his heart hammering against my ear. I know, Bella. But I meant what I said. I'll burn the world before I let anyone hurt you. It should have scared me. The violence, the casual discussion of war, the way Dante had shot a man without hesitation. But wrapped in his arms, feeling the fierce protectiveness radiating from him, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my life. Take her home, Dante told Marco. I need to handle this. No. I pulled back to look at him. I'm staying. You said you wanted me to see your world. So show me. All of it. Pride flickered in his eyes. It gets darker from here, Emma. I know. He kept me by his side for the rest of the day. I watched him interrogate the teenager, gently getting information about Victor's operations. Watched him coordinate with his lieutenants, planning responses, shoring up defenses. Watched him navigate the brutal machinery of organized crime with the skill of someone born to it. And through it all, his hand never left me. Touching my waist, my shoulder, threading through my hair. Claiming me in front of everyone, marking me as his in a way that made his men treat me with the same respect they showed him. By the time we returned to the penthouse that evening, exhaustion dragged at my bones. But more than that, understanding settled in my chest like a stone. This was who Dante Castellano was. Not just the charming host or the passionate lover, but the violent man who protected his territory and his people with ruthless efficiency. The man who would kill for me without hesitation. Who would start a war rather than let me be threatened. Rosa had prepared dinner, but neither of us had much appetite. We sat in his living room, the city lights sprawling below us, and the weight of unspoken things hung heavy in the air. Tomorrow is day 3, I said quietly. I know. And then I have to choose. Yes. He turned to face me, his expression raw in a way I'd never seen. I told myself I'd respect whatever you decided, that I'd let you go if that's what you wanted. But Emma, I don't know if I can. You've gotten under my skin, into my blood. The thought of you leaving, of going back to that life, of being vulnerable and alone. It makes me want to lock you in this penthouse and throw away the key. That's kidnapping, I said. But there was no heat in it. I know. I'm a monster, remember? He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. But I'm your monster, if you want me. I'll give you everything, Emma. Not just money or safety, but purpose. You'll matter. To me, to my organization. You'll never be invisible again. And if I want more, the words escaped before I could stop them. If I want the man behind the monster, the boy who loved his mother, the person who understands what it's like to fight for every scrap of existence, something broke in his expression, then you'll have me. All of me. The good, the bad, the irredeemably violent. I'll be yours as completely as you'll be mine. He pulled me into his lap, and I went willingly, my defenses finally crumbling. His kiss was different this time. Less claiming, more pleading, like I held his fate in my hands instead of the other way around. Stay. He whispered against my mouth. Choose me. Choose this. I know it's insane and dangerous and probably the worst decision you could make. But stay anyway. Be mine. I thought about my studio apartment with its broken elevator, the 3 jobs that ground me into dust, the invisibility that had become my shield and my prison, the mother who took my money but never my calls, the life I'd been living that wasn't really living at all. And I thought about this, being seen, being cherished, being protected by someone who would go to war for me. The danger, yes, but also the purpose, the belonging. I'm terrified, I admitted. Good. That means you're smart. His forehead pressed against mine. But be terrified with me. We'll figure it out together. You really won't let me go, will you? Even if I choose to leave. Probably not. His honesty was brutal and somehow comforting. I'd try. I'd convince myself I was respecting your choice. But then I'd find excuses to see you, to protect you from a distance, to insert myself into your life until you couldn't imagine it without me. I'm obsessed, Emma. Completely. Irrevocably. It was madness. But maybe I'd been looking for madness my whole life. Something to shake me out of the numb existence I'd been barely surviving. Okay, I whispered. He pulled back to search my face. Okay? Okay, I'll stay. I choose you. I choose this. I cupped his face, feeling the stubble rough against my palms. I choose to matter, even if it means being owned by a beautiful monster. His smile was incandescent. You won't regret this. I probably will, I said honestly. But I'll regret leaving me again, and this time when he lifted me in his arms and carried me to his bedroom. I didn't stop him. This time, when his hands roamed under my clothes and his mouth mapped every inch of my skin, I gave myself over to it completely. He made love to me like I was something precious and breakable, worshipping every curve, every scar, every imperfection. And when I shattered in his arms, his name on my lips, he held me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. Afterward, wrapped in his sheets with his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home. I love you, he murmured into my hair. I know it's too soon, too fast, too intense. But I do. I love you, Emma Winters. I should have been skeptical. Should have questioned whether love could bloom in 3 days, but I'd learned that time was relative. You could know someone for years and never truly see them, or you could know them for days and understand them completely. I love you too, I whispered back. My beautiful, terrifying monster. His arms tightened around me. Mine. Yours, I agreed. And as the city sparkled below us and the future stretched uncertain but undeniably bright, I realized I'd finally stopped being invisible. I'd been seen, been claimed, been chosen by a man who would burn the world to keep me safe. It was dangerous, and probably insane, and definitely not the life I'd imagined for myself, but it was mine. We were each other's, and that was enough. 6 months later, I stood in Dante's penthouse, our penthouse now, watching Rosa fuss over the wedding dress hanging in the closet, white silk and lace, custom-made, more beautiful than anything I'd ever imagined wearing. You're sure about this? Rosa asked, though her eyes sparkled with joy. I'm sure. And I was. The life I'd chosen came with danger. Yes, Victor still pushed at Dante's territories. There were threats, violence, nights when Dante came home with blood on his hands that wasn't his own. But there was also love, purpose. A place in the world where I mattered, where I was protected and cherished and seen. Dante appeared in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. The guests are arriving. Are you ready, Mrs. Castellano? Not Mrs. yet, I teased. Soon. He crossed to me, pulling me into his arms with the possessive certainty I'd come to crave. In 2 hours, you'll be mine in every way that matters. Legally, spiritually, eternally. I'm already yours, I reminded him. I have been since that first night. I know, his kiss was tender, reverent. But I want the world to know it too. Want everyone to understand that Emma Castellano is untouchable. That anyone who threatens you signs their own death warrant. It should have sounded insane. Instead, it sounded like love. Twisted and dangerous, and absolutely perfect for who we were. I love you, I said. I love you more. His hand found my stomach, where our secret grew. We hadn't told anyone yet, waiting until after the wedding, both of you. Tears pricked my eyes. You're going to be such an overprotective father. Damn right I am. His fierce protectiveness made my heart swell. Our children will never know what it's like to be powerless, to be invisible. They'll be loved, protected, safe, because of their terrifying father. And their brilliant, strong, beautiful mother who chose to stay when anyone sensible would have run. He kissed me again, deeper this time. Thank you for choosing me, Bella, for seeing past the monster to the man underneath. Thank you for making me visible, I whispered back, for giving me a life worth living. Music drifted up from below, the string quartet beginning to play. Our wedding was starting. Hand in hand, we walked toward our future. Dangerous and uncertain, and absolutely ours. I'd come to serve champagne at a New Year's party, and left owned by a Mafia boss who loved me with obsessive, all-consuming intensity. It was the best mistake I'd ever made. And as Dante slipped the ring onto my finger hours later, promising to love and protect and cherish me until death, and probably beyond, I knew I'd choose him again and again, in every lifetime, in every version of our story, because some people are worth the danger. Some love is worth the risk, and some monsters are exactly what we need to finally feel safe.